Greetings, I am Liz.
And I'm Scandal.
And let's play a game together.
Yes.
All right, so two things. One, I can't believe we picked up Sayori, dragged her out of the closet, and then dropped her down on the ground again. Because, damn, dude. But also, how were the crayons not spilled inside the closet?
Also, 3, I still think that her costume is basically a little bit vacuum sealed in regards to the other, where it's just her standing normally. But this is truly even worse. Which is why I'm like, this feels a little exploitative. And that weird way of going, my friend just hit their head. You know what I'm doing? I'm staring at her boobs.
This is a very male-gazy presentation kind of thing, yeah. Sort of interestingly. So I'm also kind of interested, given how much sound design we've been exposed to just in our lives that indicate tone and experience, having the exact same bouncy music with her like this is a little bit jarring for me.
Well, it's also really interesting, and I mentioned this actually when we ended out the other episode, and then we were just talking in between these episodes, was just going like, I wonder if part of it is meant to be unnerving, like that it's just that cheerful, even though, you know, weirder and weirder stuff is starting to happen. Or something. You still got this bouncy thing, and then when it truly gets horrible, you're still gonna have this basically thoughtless, you know, continuing music that's just gonna be like, ta-da, and you're like, whoa, that's a little much. All right, so Sayori slowly releases her hands from her forehead. You dumb fuck, you're fine. I gently brush her bangs to the side.
Ow.
Oh, her face changed.
Ow.
Baby.
Yep.
Sorry. Oh my god. There's a huge red mark in the center of her forehead.
My entire forehead. Ow.
Apply it directly to the forehead. Slap. A bump is starting to form as well.
Oh, that is a hard hit. When they formed that quickly,
yeah.
She went down for that crayon like lightning.
Yes.
To have hit her head that hard. Oh, I have done that before.
That sucks.
And it is so hurty. Yeah, when you start swelling right away, you have to hit real hard.
Yes. Though, honestly, if you hit it at the right angle, you do not need to hit hard at all, in my experience. Sometimes it's just a solid, like, crack in, like, the right corner.
Basically pounds per inch kind of thing, your pressure. So if it's a really tiny hit, it is much harder even without the amount of, like, massive force. So it's just how spread out it is as well.
Yeah, that's true.
But yes.
Man, that's gonna swell up. I should find you some ice.
Splat. Where? Oh.
Where would I even find ice around this time?
At the snack machine. Oh, God.
I'm not going there. I know what you're going to have me do.
Where would I even find ice around this time? Is there ice around at different times? Or are you meaning like the cafeteria is closed?
The cafeteria might be closed, which would make sense. Though I don't really always recall when cafeterias were closed.
And the office is closed, I guess? That seems I don't know. When I did after-school work in a couple different schools that I volunteered for, because as a homeschooler you get to do interesting things sometimes, the cafeterias were always open after hours. Like, not open, no one was in there, but they weren't locked, so you could go in and get ice. Like,
yeah,
there was
like
a number of times. Or like when church group, when I was a real little kid, met in the basement of a school or whatever, then you could always just walk into the cafeteria area and they would get ice for their cooler or whatever.
Right?
Like it was just there?
That's what I remember. Like,
the ice doesn't go away, and usually the cafeteria is not locked closed, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, the fridges are locked sometimes, or the freezers.
Right. Or, like, the back, actual, like, working areas are closed and locked
But yeah, there's often ice supply. I don't know, though. It could be different at different schools.
Yeah, where would I even find ice around this time? I guess a cold drink would do. Here, have a beer. Like...
you don't have to... I'm fine with looking like a unicorn now. Maybe my bangs could just, cover it if I just styled them a little differently. I could clip my bow on the front for a few days.
Even wincing from the pain, Sayori makes a silly joke. You idiot. I just don't care either way. What are you saying? You already look like one. I'll be right back, okay? Please do not move, even though I moved you, and somehow the crayons didn't go anywhere else. But stay here, okay? I'll just get it.
Okay. I'll stay exactly like this. I'll just keep, stretching my hip flexors. It'll be fine.
Because this is how normal people sit. I pat Sayori on the shoulder and run out into the hallway. I locate the nearest vending machine. What should I get?
Are we going to make a choice?
Doesn't really matter since it'll be used as an ice pack rather than to drink. But I know Sayori likes apple juice, so I purchased that one.
Is it chilled apple juice?
It probably is.
That's kind of hilarious.
That's also like you have vending machines
that are
in your
actually
school.
chilled.
I'm trying to remember if I really remember in the schools that I was ever in that weren't in the cafeteria, you just had vending machines around the school.
I'd say most of the schools, like high schools that I've been to, do not have vending machines because they really are like, we want to control where the money spending is.
Right.
And there really is like the reason that kids can make successful businesses out of like selling candy bars or soda is because they don't have those things available in vending machines in the schools because there's no vending machines.
Yeah.
A lot of them though, they will try and basically create a vend service in the cafeteria where you can buy like extras during lunch times or sometimes during breakfast hours and stuff, where it's not through a vending machine, it's with a person, but they're little snack wrapped things, like they'll sell their brownies or their Rice Krispies or whatever.
Dang, man. Part of my brain's like, I want to go back to ETSU and see if I can find, like, I swear.
The first time I saw a vending machine in school was at college.
Yeah, I don't know. Now, I know it's different in different schools, but yeah, I don't really recall.
I know that in America, though, there's a level of, like, control that I've always encountered in schools where they don't let the kids just buy stuff.
Well, especially in regards to a lot of them like to claim that they're doing special diet things, which is ridiculous because a lot of kids also have horrific, basically, like, dietary.
Additionally, though, the control of like basically snack spending money, they go, if you're going to be spending money on that, it should be to fundraise the school. You should be buying either like special popcorn from us, like you've seen the little popcorn drive things, or you should be buying like, you know, things from us, the school, not from a vending machine company. And since the school itself doesn't buy into vending machines as part of their budget and then stock them and take the money out of them, then they're like, this money isn't going to us.
Yeah.
So we'd rather have you spend your snack money on supporting the school and putting it into the school budget.
Right.
That's what I'm familiar with.
Okay.
Anyway, apple juice.
Apple juice. So I purchased that one. In just a moment, I'm already returning to the classroom where I left Sayori.
And I had to spend money on getting her a snack anyway.
I am fucking disappointed. She has one palm on her forehead and is using the other hand to clumsily scoop crayons back into the box.
One-handed crayon scooping for the win. Honestly, okay, scooping them back into the box doesn't work very well, but if you like prop them between your knees or prop them against, you know, something standing, you can then drop them in there one by one.
Yeah, it'd be fine. I feel like, again, in some ways, some of the writing associated with Sayori really does make me think of a small child.
We are really trying to demean Sayori. Like, the pro tag's words towards Sayori are specifically clumsily doing this, poorly doing that, messily doing this, being sloppy about that. Like, there's a lot of derogatory descriptives associated with Sayori, but now we have cute romantic music.
Oh, I did. I was actually going to point that out, going, it suddenly became soft and floofy.
And I'm just like, I see. At least they were already in the wrong spots before I spilled them. Oh God, I remember that. I remember trying to keep them all in order so I'd only ever pull one out at a time from a brand new box, so I could put it right back in the right space, the right spot in the box. Or that thing where you shake the crayon box upside down so they color their spots on the lid.
I actually,
and then you can match them back.
I think I remember basically like sometimes teachers would do that when I was growing up, so they would do it themselves to make sure that this is where they go back in order, because they would go back and they would fix it themselves, because you know you can't explain that to kids and going that it's just, you know, a thing.
And the funny thing is some of the crayons aren't really ordered by any particular way in reference to like color palettes or complementary colors or anything.
Nope.
So it's just a level of going, but I'm trying to put them back the way the manufacturer had them because that's how they were.
Right, which also makes it very confusing because especially it's like that's sort of a preference thing. So in some ways I never attached to it even though I got what teachers were going for. And sometimes you're just kind of like, I guess it's just sort of to remind you of what it was like.
Interestingly, the supply closet doesn't actually have a latch of any kind. It has a pull handle that looks like it can rotate and has a lock built into it, but there's no actual latch on the door. So it's just a dummy handle just for pulling it open and closing it.
Huh, that's actually really a good observation.
I always thought that was interesting.
Sayori, here. Oh my God. I hand Sayori the bottle of apple juice.
She gets it.
Oh!
Okay, that looks fairly empty for a brand new bottle of apple juice, but that's kind of cool that they drew it, and I support that.
Hey!
Nice.
Like, nice. Good job. Like, that looks impressive.
It's nice and cold.
Sayori opens the cap and starts drinking from it, because that's what I was expecting. Sayori, what are you doing? It's for your forehead, idiot!
Yep, and there's that language again. You're an idiot. Not, don't do that. Just use it first. There's nothing supportive here. It's incredibly judgmental and direct the way I'm hearing it and the way I'm familiar with that kind of language. Sorry, I forgot. I forgot. I was just feeling really happy in this moment, and like you were taking care of me the way you always do, and that it was a really thoughtful gesture, and since I was feeling so comfortable, I just remembered that I was thirsty, and I just wanted to enjoy the apple juice because I really do like apple juice.
That's why I got it, except that also at the same time, too, I get mad at you.
Because you're really thoughtful like that, Splat.
How hard did you hit your head?
And so again, that consistency of language where the protag, your MC, has never really been friendly in any way. The consistency of language throughout has been actually surprising to me, because again, my good friend Scandal here actually kind of wanted, like, pulled back a couple of times going, whoa, the main character sounds so mean, because of the ad-libbing on Splat, which was fun and we're both fine with. Again, fiction, there's no problem with that, but just kind of going, this gets a little bit more serious, feels a little bit darker and less tongue-in-cheek, after a while. And then the dialogue they've written seems to support that kind of a character over and over again. Someone who's really judgmental, really from their own perspectives and ideas, and really about like, I have an idea of how things should be, and I'm just going to tell you you're not meeting those expectations.
Yeah. There's also an interesting thing though here too, because I know based on my exposure to anime, is basically what it feels like to me is they're going more for a trope that I don't really like, honestly, but I don't really watch a lot of romance as a result of it, because a lot of it seems like basically romance stories is really this sort of weird, patronizing, I'm gonna treat you strangely as a sibling kind of thing, where I'm gonna pet you on the head, I'm gonna sort of tell you that you're an idiot, I'm gonna be, casually, like, weirdly degrading of your experience, but also, like, I care about you, you dingus, and it's just like, it's real. To me, it feels very passively insidious in that way of being like, it works, I guess, okay for the story, but I feel like if you really do start applying it to a real life situation, it starts getting pretty dark pretty quickly, because you really are constantly starting to drag somebody's self-worth down a lot and going, I'm gonna pet you, I'll treat you like a child, I'll do this thing. And then, like I said, I don't really watch a lot of basically like romance basically aimed anime as a result, because I always saw that in there and it made me uncomfortable.
And there's this thing again of just going, behaviors that can be framed as fun, cute, romantic, interesting, or give you the doki dokis, as it were, in fiction don't necessarily work that way at all in real life. And I know that for myself, the ideas that a lot of romantic fiction gave me caused me to get into a lot of very painful situations, because the type of behaviors that were levied against me by abusive or pushy boys in my life were coded as romantic behaviors of interest in the fantasy and fiction that I was reading and watching. And so when they continued to shove their way into my life, it was like, oh, that means you're really, really interested. And even if I'm not interested, I should be responding to this. And it doesn't mean everyone's going to react that way. But again, there's that level of being aware of what your media may be normalizing for you in your real life if you don't already have standards for those things.
Right. And this is again where both of us are like, because I had similar experience, though definitely not in the same way, of just going like as a child, because I never really had long discussions or really was taught basically to be open to critical thinking much.
Or had healthy modeled relationships to observe.
There was just basically echoing more or less like media voices going, oh, this is how normal people talk, and I wasn't really aware that that's what I was doing, or that it wasn't real. Like, I'm still gonna break up my story about DBZ. Even though DBZ clearly was made up and incredibly fantastical as a child, because I didn't have a lot of examples and that a lot of things were very painful for me, I wanted to hide in that experience going, but this is the way that relationships work, right? And it got me into some really bad situations where people just got really angry at me, and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but this is how it's supposed to work, right?
And it's one of those things where there's been a lot of deconstruction and like thoughtful essays and like just, scientific writing on the subject of how fiction can affect affect people, where it doesn't necessarily drive them to any kind of concerning or harmful
Not at
acts,
all.
but often it drives them to situations that are unsafe for themselves more than anything, because it will give them ideas that harmful things are normal, and especially in reference towards women, because the fields of fiction and sci-fi have largely been dominated by men or been men-oriented. That there's this strong devaluing of women, even when women are the focus, where men still act like the men in action movies that are written for male fantasy manliness, and they're often written and or characterized as objects more than people. And so, as myself being a girl and then a woman, and then knowing a lot of other girls and women, there really was this strong drive to want to model that experience of being the valuable girl and being treated in those ways, because that's what the real relationship looks like.
Right.
And it was, again, lacking modeling of a mature, healthy relationship. So I grew up around a lot of people with divorced parents, separated parents, parents that were never married, were never together, single mothers, single fathers, that kind of thing, very poor demographic, relatively low social education demographic. And so there was a lot of experience of all of the relationships that were romantic, that were modeled around me, were generally very harmful or very unbalanced and like toxic or just straight out abusive. Some of them, calling the police to that house 2 or 3 times a week kind of thing.
Yeah.
Those were some of my kid friends' parents, you know? And it was one of those things where if you don't have any relationships modeled positively around you, you then look to fiction or to media for examples of relationships. And then whatever you can attach to, you then often hope to find in real life.
And that's not even saying that you're consciously doing it either.
No, it's not usually conscious at all. And thank you for that addendum there. Because it really is like a subconscious behavior of going, this feels familiar and matches familiar subconscious things.
Right. Or also, again, it's the way that things are presented. Like how we've mentioned Maid-sama before, is that the way the narrative is structured is, even when you might go, something seems off, but I'm not sure what it is, you're continually being taught over and over with the language of the camera, the language of the characters being correct, the language with the way the writing and the plot beats go. You're literally being taught that regardless of how awkward their relationship might actually be, and sometimes where there's abusive language or there's manipulative behavior or there's controlling behavior like you wouldn't believe, they're always right, and it's still okay in the end, and that's fine.
That it is nonetheless good. It's sort of the thing, and if you're not thinking a romantic beat, actually I want to talk about, just real quickly, Breaking Bad. So there was an experience that was really interesting with Breaking Bad, where the main character is supposed to be a bad person.
Yes.
Like, he is supposed to be a not cool dude, doing a lot of, like, asshole stuff, and generally being emotionally unavailable and neglectful to the people in his life that he should be present for.
Yes.
And there was an interesting cultural phenomenon where people hated his wife, who, by all accounts, even according to the writers and directors, was behaving very rationally in reference to his behavior, and thought he was cool as hell. And there was a lot of guys who wanted to model his behavior, be like him, be as successful as him. And what they thought about and broke down when they looked at the show, they're like, we have framed him, since he was meant to be a sympathetic, interesting, relatable protagonist, someone you would want to root for, someone you would like.
He was meant to be the hero.
They wrote him to be likable in the sense that he would be fun and hit those sort of clever, interesting, cool beats, but he was still supposed to be an asshole. And they're like, but your framing and your characterization and basically your camera and story framing said that he's the cool guy. And in our culture, it's really important to be cool. So it was more valuable that he was the cool guy than anything he was doing.
Yes, despite the fact that his wife had every right to basically be angry at him and threaten to leave him and whatever else, because he was being a terrible person.
And basically that's the kind of thing that can happen basically with any fiction, where you listen more to the emotional tone of things than looking at what's actually going on there. And that's why, like, literary criticism and analysis is really important, because sometimes you go, well, everything they said and did, if it were framed any other way, would be total asshole dick moves. But God, it looks so cool when they did it. And your brain doesn't always separate the so cool when they did it from then you sort of either modeling the behavior or responding positively to it when you see it in real life.
Right.
Such as somebody that is one of your friends at the time being an asshole to you, but they look cool while they do it. So even if it hurts your feelings, you're like, but that's okay.
Right. And I was actually also going to bring up, just for myself, like, I feel like I don't want anybody to get the idea, because I'm pretty sure my friend's not intending to, say that people who are from households where you have single-parent families or divorced families, that they are inherently going to be worse or less than anyone else. Because
not at all.
Yeah.
And that thank you, because I didn't intend that in any way. All I was saying is that in the households that I was observing, the romantic relationships that were present weren't healthy.
Yeah, and that was it. That just happened to be an aspect of what also was going on.
And that is the only place that I'm putting it, and like nothing else was nothing, even that doesn't make any of those people bad or less valuable.
Not at all.
It's just a layer of, this is a piece that exists there. And the same way you could say these houses are dog owners.
Right.
And that isn't a critique or a moral judgment, it's just a piece of information.
Right. Well, and I was also going to say, even for me growing up, so I grew up strictly Mormon, as a lot of you guys know, I remember watching a lot of people being deeply unhappy, but always putting on basically this mask or this face of this united couple in this household, where if you actually knew what was going on, they were really fucking unhappy people. And in a lot of ways, they were even worse, because they would never deal with their issues, and they would just tear each other apart more and more and more as years went on. And it was really sad, but because our culture, in the culture that I was raised in, you're not really ever supposed to show that you're having problems.
So
yeah, there's a lot of...
And you can't deal with it, because that means you have to admit having it.
Yeah, so how hard did you hit your head?
So again, no judgment here, not meaning to make anyone sound framed as being bad, just going, if you have a value as a person to have a healthy relationship that edifies you and doesn't hurt you, but all around you, all the people in relationships are all getting hurt by them, you don't have any examples to model that you can then move forward with. You would have to try something new, but it's very hard to try something new if you've never seen it before.
Right. And there's also that thing too that I think, so what I wanted to try to encourage as the years have actually gone, and I've realized this myself, is actually basically encouraging people to have critical thinking, or going like, engage. If you know kids who have interests in anime or books or comics or whatever else, if you even know other adults who have interest in the things that you do, challenge each other and go, hey, what did you like about that? Well, what about this thing? Ask questions, engage in their media. You are more likely to basically change minds or be more involved in actually changing things, and also making sometimes people aware of their own potentially toxic behaviors by pointing them out sometimes in your favorite media. And some people really just don't realize that they've picked up on something and attached to it, because a lot of people also nowadays define themselves by the things they like. Because in some ways, a lot of us don't have identities, and it's really sad.
Or we don't have communities, or we don't have connection, or who we are has been sort of pushed down over and over again by someone, either who was important to us or who was in charge of us, telling us that that piece of ourselves isn't okay.
Yeah.
And so around them or for them or both, we try to get rid of that piece of ourselves to accommodate their basically judgment. And it's not it helps, you start losing yourself.
Yeah.
And it's once you've lost yourself so many times or in so many places, there can be a level of not really knowing who you are anymore, even if you're given freedom to express yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's when you examine your media, it can help you figure out what you actually like, what you care about, what your own values are, rather than what external values have just been sort of thrust upon you, or what unexamined values you may have internalized that were just given to you, but you didn't necessarily make yourself. There's this this really cool thing where they talk about how most people's values are inherited and they're unexamined. So you have your parents who had values, and you get some of your values from them, if not many of your values from them. And you often don't know why you have any of those values, except that, well, your parents had them.
Right.
And the thing is they often don't even know why they have them, except their parents had them.
Yeah.
And it can be a slow evolvement, but if you then examine those values and go, why do I do what I do? And if you've heard the story before, why do I put the strainer over the turkey kind of thing, then you can you can start exploring who you are.
Yeah.
And it can be really, really powerful.
Yes, it can be a really empowering experience, too.
Yes.
Like, sometimes I understand where it can be scary of going, bull, I don't have answers for that. And that's like, that's okay that you don't actually have to have answers for it, because sometimes there are things where you just go, well, I wear clothes because it's polite. polite. We don't necessarily know exactly why it's polite, but it's a thing sometimes where some people go, you know what, it's okay that this is a thing that we agree on, that's a thing that we should probably do. Let's not be racist, let's not be mean to people, let's include people, let's share conversations. There's certain ways that we could talk to each other that could be better. Like, there are reasons why we do the things that we do, but sometimes we don't exactly have perfect answers, and that's all right too. It's the thing is that the unexamined life, I always feel like, is not worth living. Whoops, and that probably popped up over that. Goodness gracious. Sorry. WinZip is extremely excited if you saw that. But so anyway, thank you very much, guys, though, for joining us. If you like what we do, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Also, please feel free to share our videos if you're having a good time with us.
Yeah.
Please also feel free to go check out our Ko-Fi or Patreon. I've got some links in the description down below. And I have been Scandal.
And I have been Lies.
And it was great playing with you.
Bye!